building, certainly no smoking on the campus. If you got cell phones, like I did, because it's happened to me, put them in vibrate or turn them off, either one of the two, so we don't upset the applicants who are presenting this evening. So first on our agenda is Flo Luncheonette, 225 West Main Street, seeks permission to convert former pre-approved restaurant, family-style restaurant. Subject premises is located in the E industrial zone. You gentlemen, or whoever's going to speak on behalf of the applicant, can come to the microphone. We need to have your green cards, the proof that you did your mailing. Give those to Carol over here. And state your name and address for the record, and tell us all about your application, sir.
Good evening, Chairman, Board. My name is David Vigliata, and I'm at 225 Atlantic Avenue in Patchogue, New York, 11772. And we're here tonight to present the application for Flo's Luncheonette at 225 West Main Street in Patchogue.
Okay. So for the record, this is in the same building with Wycliffe College and the gym, both in the fitness. Is that the name of the new establishment outside?
Mr. D's.
Mr. D's Fitness. But it was previously the Quiznos. Okay. So go ahead, tell us what it is that you.
Okay, we're looking to put in a family-style luncheonette. Will be takeout as well as sit-down facility with 34 seats.
The hours of operations?
Hours of operation would be from 10 in the morning to 10 at night.
How many employees?
Probably looking at 30 part-time employees, maybe half a dozen full-time employees, but predominantly it would be part-time employees on 2 shifts a day.
So you have roughly about 18 people in the establishment, if I understand that correctly? Does that sound right?
Probably about 8 people per shift.
8 people per shift, okay.
7 days a week, or?
Yeah.
10 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week.
Yes.
Now, parking's already accounted for in the plan, correct, Carol?
That's correct.
So tell us about the layout of the establishment. Because we have a couple of different plans here. Do we know, Councilor, we have
We have a started off the plan that we're proceeding on because of some deviation in the plans that we have, both in terms of the seating calculation and in terms of the exterior area.
This plan here, without the seating. And then we have the other plan that
We
contains.
have one, yeah, then we have another one with seating and then the interior that's drawn on.
Yes, that's that one.
And then we have another plan that shows a different number of internal seats. And
Oh, that?
That was the original
that was
plan
the
that we
original
brought to the workshop,
Right.
yeah, and
and
it's
that's been modified.
This is the.
All right, so this is
Correct.
so
Yes,
So this is the correct plan?
that is correct.
And this plan does not show any SLC.
That's correct.
So what's this plan then? It's got an architect stamp on it. Is this valid or not valid?
That.
That is valid.
This is valid.
Except for that plan is accurate, say, well, that plan is accurate, say it does not show seating except at count. So there's no table set up, but we need a table set up to do the parking calculation. So this plan.
No, we drew the plans. They had a-
Yeah, this is the plan that shows the table.
You should have a larger scale version.
Yes. We were allowed 34 seats by the health department.
Who drew the plan?
John Ramirez?
Okay, so can you approach, one of you approach and look at the plans we have in front of us. Tell us what the right one is so we're all off the same sheet.
This is the plan without seating,
Okay?
and then this is the plan with seating.
All right.
And we just put these seats in for the health department allowing 34 seats.
Okay.
That's what we put in as our, we're not exactly, this layout might not be exactly that, but that's the proposed one as of now.
This one
This
is-
was original for the last work session, but that does not.
But the health department didn't give you that.
No. No.
Okay, you can step back. Thank you. All right. So there's very little alterations, and we should note for the record that we did meet with the applicant last month, right, at a work session. And you, since our last work session, one of the things that we did discuss is that you actually need to do very little as far as the kitchen area is concerned for your operation. You're just going to change one or two small things, correct? Could you just expound on that a little bit?
Yes, I mean, we are putting in, you know, a fryer and charbroil and things like that that did not exist as part of the Quiznos setup.
Right.
But that's all been accounted for in the drawing, and with that is an exhaust hood venting system, and that's all part of the, you know, setup.
Have you, since our last discussion, have you gone to the health department, gotten any further guidance from them on the restaurant? Did you get approvals or?
No, we don't have approvals because we're still waiting for the final plumbing drawing from the architect.
Okay.
It should be by the end of the week.
But you're not making any substantial changes to the plumbing, and there already is a grease trap installed in that building, correct? So there has previously had health department approvals.
Absolutely, yes, it's good.
So when you arrive at your number 34, that number came from where? So number 34.
It came from the Quiznos application.
The previous approval?
Yes.
Okay, I got you. Are you going to approach them for more seating than 34?
We'd like to, if we could, see what we could get, you know, based on the space that we have and again, the parking that we have.
I mean, we could be in a position to look at the 34. If you do get approval for more than that, and you do want to add that seating, you have to give us a revised plan.
Okay.
All right, questions from the board? We did kind of extensively go through this, and this is a previous use for the restaurant. Now, as far as any other changes you're making to the interior of the structure?
There'll be
Sink
little
floor.
changes to the existing setup for the walk-in freezer and refrigerator. That'll be slightly changed, enlarged actually, utilizing more of the back area, storage area. And that's,
But everything else is cosmetic?
Yes, exactly.
Have you made application to the Architectural Review Board, which happens to be with us here this evening?
no, we haven't done that yet.
Okay, you're going to need to do that obviously for your signage. And at this point in time, I will ask Karen Sorensen, is there any questions that your board has of the applicants? Because they are within the business district, so.
We do have a few pictures of signage here.
Yeah, I've seen newer signs as well, so we can see that.
Sure.
And it's not formal, obviously.
We went to J Signs, who you understand has a pretty good
This is
understanding
the
of
way
what's allowed.
Right. And I don't think you can act on that now, obviously, because it hasn't been a formal process, but certainly, you know, anything that can get out of the way to help you streamline your process would certainly be in everybody's advantage, everybody's opinion.
It's going to be how many signs?
Two.
Two. One on the front and
One on the
Lake Street side, one on the Lake Street side, and then one on the parking lot side.
Probably not unlike Quiznos did, correct?
Correct.
There's already pre-existing gooseneck lighting that's on the side of the building.
the colors.
Yes,
Yes.
Are
yes,
two.
kind of flow.
Yeah, that's a PVC sign.
One location.
Yes,
Yeah.
similar. How soon can we do the application or start that application process?
You can hand it in and get you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm taking, we want to keep them?
If I,
You can keep them.
There are centralized dumpsters, I believe, at the site.
Yes, already enclosed in chain link fence.
And I don't anticipate you'll generate all that much waste, but certainly the size of the dumpsters that are there today will probably
Seems to be adequate.
seem to be adequate in your opinion.
Yes.
Any other questions from the board? No? There being no questions, thank you, gentlemen. I'll excuse you, and I'll ask the audience if anybody has any comments, either pro or con the application. If so, sir, please step to the microphone and let's hear what you have to say. Please identify yourself for the record, state your name and address.
My name is John Bojack, I live at 8 Madison Street.
Yes, sir.
Can I just, I'm glad to see that the ARB is, can I just see that sign for a second?
Actually, just let me bring to your attention that the signage issue is not going to be resolved at this meeting, or it is an ARB issue, but out of courtesy, because they're here for another application, I allow them to ask the questions they have about it. But go ahead.
Fine, I'll keep that in mind in my comments. This is the former hot dog truck that's now graduated into a store, correct?
I don't know if you can characterize it that way, but I guess you could say it rolled over in that direction,
Yeah, I
yes.
don't want to, that's true, that was not the right word, it was a food truck.
Yeah.
I'm sure the community is going to be very happy that this is taking place in this form, and I know that's what the community in that area wanted. So I think this is all good, that they're moving to this location. The only thing I wanted to say about this, and very coincidentally, ARB is here today in some capacity, is that this sign doesn't indicate that this business is located in Patchogue Village. I've noticed that signs in the village of Patchogue, for example, the pharmacy that's recently opened up on West Avenue and on Main Street, says it's in Patchogue. But this is Patchogue Village, not Patchogue. So I recommend to the ARB, in this application before, or when this application gets to it, or similar applications, that they require that all signs for businesses that locate themselves in Patchogue Village indicate that they're in Patchogue Village and not some other community. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Butcher. Anyone else wish to make any comments for or against the application? Okay, there being no one else coming forward, I'll entertain a motion that we close the public hearing.
So moved.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Thank you, gentlemen. You can notify me.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, decision calendar. Next application is that of Jennifer Confafio, 44 Jennings Avenue. Seek permission to maintain existing 24 by 4 inch by 24 by 4 inch detached garage. Subject premises located in the A residential zone. Hi, good evening. Did you state your name and address for the record? You're going to speak.
Jennifer Patchogue, 44 Jennings Avenue, Patchogue, New York.
Okay. Sir?
Frank Patchogue, 44 Jennings Avenue, Patchogue, New York.
Okay. So you are before us tonight, I guess because you, why? Just down your old garage, or you put up a new garage without a
It was
building
a
permit?
very old garage, it was rotted, and then some of those windstorms that we had last year, most of it blew down. So we rebuilt it.
Okay. Now, what was the size of the old garage?
Exactly the same as that one.
Exactly the same.
So it was rebuilt already on the original footprint.
Correct.
Carol, is there any issues with the ZBA?
They did approve, the variances, because it was closer than the 5% back, but they allowed it, they got their approval last week.
Okay. Did you replace the actual slab that was on, or did you?
Yeah.
You did. So it's a new structure? Totally new
I mean,
structure?
part of the foundation was still good, remains.
Yeah.
A lot of it was water damage from the age, the blocks when we went to build them, just fell apart, so,
So do you have electric in this garage?
yes.
Water?
No.
Heat?
There's gonna be, I work on my race cars and stuff, there's gonna be a portable heater, but nothing.
Okay.
So
And,
So this is constructed already?
Yeah.
Are there lights in the garage door? It just appears here as just a blank door. There are lights, okay.
How, is there a site plan?
The survey in the packet.
Oh, okay. So this is set way back on the property?
Yes.
This property is, what, 216 feet deep, so you're sitting back there at around 160 before you even start the garage.
Some doesn't end there, but yes. I don't know the exact, but that would be,
Yeah, roughly. I'm just looking at it. You're not out on the street. You have to search for this to
you
find
can
it.
barely see it from over there.
So let's talk about, what kind of siding did you put on the garage?
Vinyl,
And what's on the house?
vinyl,
Does it match the house?
it does.
How about the shingles?
Same, exact same,
So your garage matches your house?
yes.
There's windows, there's lights in the garage door, there's no heat, other than portable heat that you might bring in. Any questions with the elevations, anyone? No? Okay. Any
This
other
is just a
questions?
residential garage for your own personal vehicles?
Yes. I have two toys.
Yeah, I got one too, it's gonna cost me a fortune a little later on in this meeting. It's a long story.
I'm to blame.
He is the boy.
It usually is a friend.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions for the applicant? No? All right, thank you. Anybody wish to speak for or against this application, any issues with it whatsoever? The garage matches, it's good, it's back off the street, redone. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the application as it's been submitted to us.
Motion by Mr. Weeks, second by Mr. Felice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care. Good evening. DK Marine, 264 West Avenue, seeks permission to close roof over deck with existing 12 seats, construct 500 square foot addition with row bar or with heat seats. Subject premise located in the industrial zone. Good evening, sir. Please state your name and address for the record. Tell us all about your application.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Blakesley, 264 West Avenue, Patchogue, New York. I represent Deck Marine Ore Restaurant. Company for you need green cards.
Yeah, please.
Before you have the site plan drawings to do a renovation, a minor renovation to the restaurant. And I did explain any questions, but first I would like to, I know some of you have not had an opportunity to be down, get down to the restaurant recently, but I do want it. I'm very proud of this, and this is the restaurant, and it says here, Open Table, as you know, is the largest online reservation service in the country. 2013, Open Table, the Ore Steak and Seafood Grill, top 100 outdoor dining restaurants in the United States. Now, we're actually in the top 50 because we're number 47, and that is the type of place that we've come to be. We've worked hard at it. And the comments are, besides this, review highlights, well prepared, delicious, fabulous, steaks were good, blah, blah, blah. Everything was perfect, great pleasure, great atmosphere, wonderful experience, always a pleasure, and summer favorite of ours. That's what we do down there, and we're very, very proud of it. I got between the management staff, my daughter, and my managers, and my servers, everyone works very, very hard. And for us to get that, there were only 2 other restaurants named in the state of New York. And one of them was way upstate somewhere, no idea. The other one was the River Cafe in Brooklyn, under the Brooklyn Bridge. And if those of you who know it, it's a pretty substantial restaurant. They're the big boys. And so I am very proud, and we were shocked when we got it, but 15,000 restaurants were nominated. and we pulled out, so, and what you can see on this board is that there are, we've got 4.5 stars. That's the highest that anybody who won the award has gotten, 4.5 stars. My goal this year is to get the rest of that star. And that's it, that's where I'm going. And those of you who know me, know that I like to come up with these ideas and try to expand on the restaurant and make it different each year and make it a better, nicer place to come to. We pride ourselves on being a restaurant with a bar and not a bar with food. And we pride ourselves on the branding of the restaurant that we worked hard to do. And we recognized as probably one of the finest seafood restaurants, if not in Suffolk County, if not on the island.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I'm very, very proud of that. I mean, we were all taken back, but that's voted on by our diners. So we have nothing, it's not like we had anything to do with that, but we're very, very proud of it. What I would like to do with the restaurant, over the years, there's one thing that has always been a bit of a problem, and that is that I have no air conditioning. So we have, the buildings are all wide open, and that's the way I like it. It's the way it should be. Fresh air, open air. But we do have a fairly substantial group of older people who want air conditioning. Dozen or so days during the winter, during the summer that gets very, very hot. It's hard for us to accommodate them because we don't have the air conditioning. So we have our outside patio that has been established, we've been using. Has the roof over it and all, but it's just an open patio. It's easy. Well, I shouldn't say easy. It's probably the most available spot for us to try to contain an air conditioner. So what I want to do is I want to close it in. I'm going to use bifold French doors that match the front of the building, but they fold all the way back if I want it to be open. But if we need the air conditioning, I can bring them back out and I can segregate that room so that the air conditioning will just keep that room cool. So that's number one. Number two is that I want to put a fireplace at the one end of that room. And the room is not that large. We're not changing it. Actually, we're not increasing any seating at all. We may, in fact, actually reduce the number of seats in that because of the way we're going to lay it out. It's going to be a little bit more, I don't want to say upscale, but it's going to be a little bit nicer. We're going to tighten it up a little bit. So with the fireplace at one end and the doors being able to be closed, the bifold doors, that'll enable me to do some air conditioning to accommodate all our older guests and some of the guys older because I'm starting to approach that area. And that's on that end. The other thing that I've always had it's always been a plan of mine is to improve the entrance into the restaurant. And what I've come up with, and I've done a lot of thinking about this, is to take the south end of the building and open that up. And open it up into an octagon. And that octagon will be approximately, go out about 23 feet. What that octagon will be wood and primarily glass, like floor to ceiling. So it'll be all nice and open, be a lot of glass. And then the bar will continue out into that, like a keyhole, into that octagon. That part of the bar is going to be a full-scale oyster bar. Refrigeration and the ice bins and everything will be geared toward the oyster bar with the back, with the piles of ice, shaved ice, crushed ice, and we can stack oysters, clams, and so on and so forth. And that will add about 9 seats to the bar. But it will, and the entrance will be taken from where it is right now and moved into the octagon. So you'll enter through that area. Just outside of that, we're going to expand. I want to expand the landscaping to freeform around in front of that, and put an all nice grass seeded area. A lot more flowers and plants, and make a nice area for people while they're waiting for their table or if they're just hanging out having a cocktail, and it'll enhance the restaurant. So beyond that. something that we do need to do is just make it more of an efficient flow for the staff to come through the restaurant and back and out on the deck. And by doing what I've just outlined, will enable us to be able to do that. And as I said, I know seating's always a concern, but we haven't added any more seating on the patio. And we've added 9 bar stools. But we've begun the demolition of one of the outbuildings on the property, which used to be my office and it became a storeroom. We're demoing it because it was just full of the mess with the floods from Sandy, full of mold and mildew and all kinds of, we couldn't use that anymore. So we're taking that down and we're clearing up that whole side of the property line. So as we get as that comes into play with the parking lot, we'll probably pick up another 35 parking spaces right there with that, by opening that area up. So we've added a lot more parking spaces just by taking that building away and cleaning up along the peripheral of the property. So,
Do you have,
Yep.
let me ask a question, and maybe I'm not seeing it here. Do you have a site plan of the way it will ultimately be with that building? That's the gray building where the office is, right?
yeah.
When it's in the middle of the parking lot that kind of breaks up that whole parking lot area.
Well, not the loft now, not the catering.
No,
The one on
not
the
the
right,
catering, the one,
yeah,
the
that's
one
the
that's sitting right in the middle of the. Is
yeah.
there an overall map that shows the,
Actually, there was one we submitted for demo permit, yeah.
I think that would be beneficial for the board to see. And does that have a, so this will be removed here. So will you be redoing the parking area totally then to conform with the removal of the building?
Yeah, have you been down lately? You said we did the parking lot. The parking lot's all been redone. And as soon as that building's gone, and there's some other stuff on right there that's gonna be taken out. As soon as that's gone, they're coming back to redo the parking lot, to finish that off, that area off.
So, in the new plan, you'll be able to account for more spaces,
Yeah,
which will, you say, will exceed the 8 spaces you're gonna add by the addition of the row bar, is that?
yeah, oh yeah. We're gonna.
So net, you're gonna provide more parking in the new plan
Mhm.
than you currently have.
Right.
So there'll be a net gain.
Net gain.
Yeah, it seems like you'll have about 26 more spaces compared to.
Yeah, actually, they do a little bit more than that.
that?
Yeah, because that thing sits right in a bad spot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of dead space because of its location. So once we get it out of there, we can open it up and clean it all up. We'll get a lot more cars in.
Can you step up and help us with a couple of things here?
I'd love to.
This is all we have right here for site plan.
This
So-
you're moving?
No, that's being.
That's demo.
That's the
So
office.
This is
Demo.
being demo.
That's being demo.
Okay.
That's cool.
Now, how about the metal containers? They're being moved?
Everything's being shifted back, all this is being cleaned up, all the way back in here. And what I've done is I've actually squared it off back into this yard, the back of this yard. Just to give us a little bit more office space.
No.
So you're not moving this building over here?
No. Oh, no, there was an existing shed right here that we took out.
So that's
So
going.
that's not,
So there's gonna be nothing here.
right, there's nothing there.
Nothing.
This dark line is showing is a building, they're showing this building.
And you don't
Yeah,
move this building forward.
Yeah, that's wrong. This is coming out, that's
Not being moved,
being-
it's just
yeah,
being
yeah.
collapsed.
So by doing that, you can add some parking.
All on that whole thing,
Here.
yeah. Because this thing screws everything up right here.
Yeah.
All around it. So, we pick up a lot more right in the, actually, all the way back up.
So, Dick, what we're gonna ask you to do, is give us a new site plan that shows how it's gonna be finished. So we have on file what it's supposed to look like. And showing those spaces, doing it.
This doesn't show you.
Right now. No, because you're gonna redo that.
No,
This is, no, this is the redo. The fourth is gonna be here, he's putting parking back in.
Whoa, that whole, yeah, this is not there.
This is
Oh,
additional
oh,
parking.
that's the new parking.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. You guys see this?
Well, on these things right here.
All right, why don't you step back, now that we know what we're looking at. So this is the way it's gonna be.
Yeah.
This is getting, this is getting, okay, I'm sorry. I got you.
Okay.
I got you. Well, what we thought we were looking at is the way it is. So none of this, the issue is none of this parking is here now.
Correct.
And this is what's gaining. You know, we've been through this blacktop stuff, and I think that the general consensus is probably remain gravel.
I'm not advocating.
Just for upland drainage, so it doesn't overflow.
Well, you know, we drink.
As it is now.
You're talking about the surface of the parking lot?
Yeah, surface.
It's bluestone. We
Yeah,
did
so
this
we
bluestone.
redid that, right?
And that's just for that reason, so that you can, it's not,
Okay, so we actually have here what it's gonna be.
right.
Beautiful. So the improvements you're making, just so I have this in my mind, just so we have it for the record. Of all the improvements you're making, I'm gonna add a total of 9 additional seats to the restaurant, to the entire facility,
Yeah, 500 square feet.
Yeah.
of which you are giving us a net, you're giving us how many parking spaces?
We're probably gonna end up, it's somewhere around 30, it's in there, that area, additional parking spaces.
Okay.
So, you know, we got,
So when is this project gonna kick off and when's it gonna end?
as soon as I get my approval or letter, I will be in to get the permit and we're ready to go.
So,
I've got to work before before it gets too cold, and then I gotta have everything done because I'm gonna have it ready for next spring.
so you need to get going on this as soon as possible, but my point is that these changes, we take this site plan that you gave us today, which show all these net gains, go down there, we're gonna find all those containers moved, all those things done as the site plan looks,
The
that's what it will be.
containers, some of them have already been moved, some have not,
Okay?
because we still haven't got the building.
No, but at the point where the project is completed,
They're all gonna be
which
moved.
you said
Right.
would be before next spring, that the site plan that we see here tonight will be what it will look like, precisely.
You're welcome to give me a call, let me know when you're coming down, I'll be there, I'll show you, walk the property with you.
I just want to make that clear.
But I gotta get that other half a star, that's my goal. Then I'm gonna retire. I'm done, I'm gone. History, on my book.
Now, all this is going to still be at the same level that it is, right? The doors, you're not raising
Oh, no, it's
anything.
gonna, everything's gonna be conformity all the way down the line.
Yeah, I mean,
The only difference is
you're
gonna be-
not gonna raise anything, I mean,
No, I would like to, but I can't,
Right.
because,
obviously.
you can't do it, but, just for the mere fact that, for any future storms, I would love to get it all up, it's a nightmare for us, but hopefully that was the 100-year storm, and we'll see another one like that. So, we have to say, okay, then I'll share it, move away some, but,
The materials you're using, I guess, will be as best as you can, somewhat weather resistant.
no, everything's, triple E glass, for insulation purposes or whatever, it's gotta be, all the glass has gotta be, hurricane resistant, so that you do whatever, whatever.
120 mile an hour winds.
Yeah.
Chills.
Yeah. Sorry about that. But, and I'm excited about it because it's gonna be beautiful. I have this whole thing in my head, and I've had this there for a long time, how I wanted to see this, and, this is gonna be, make the restaurant really just come together. And, as I said, very proud that we got this award, and it kind of validates what we've been doing for 28 years. And, all those people who said I was crazy and didn't know what I was doing, they only had half of it right. I really do know what I'm doing, but I am crazy. But, and as I said, John, been there a long time, all my life, I was just getting ready to move into my condo next door.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blakely.
Thank
Does
you.
anybody else have any other questions for the applicant at this time? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the application? Ladies, I'm sorry, I apologize. And Hans, I didn't see it. Ladies and gentlemen, ARB, do you have any questions for the applicant? No? We're all good? Thank you. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the application? Be no one coming forward, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearings. Motion made by Ms. Kelly. Can I get a second on closing the public hearing?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ruski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Thank you, Mr. Blakely. You will be notified.
Thank you.
Next application is that of DNF. Well, let's get a little housekeeping out of the way. We have two other applications. One will be heard at the end of the meeting. Being myself, I'll have to recuse at that point. We'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Weeks. The other application being that of Maria Alcantara, 149 Waverly Avenue, who seeks permission to maintain existing unisex hair salon. She did not get her mailings out in time, or didn't do them at all, and so therefore we need to carry this over to the next meeting, or until she comes back to us and has provided satisfactory proof that in fact the mailings went out, and then we can hear that application. So those of you keeping score at home know that that's why we're not hearing that application this evening. Next application is that of DNF Patchogue LLC, 131 East Main Street, seeks final site plan approval and architectural review board approval for assisted living project subject premises located in the H zoning district. Good evening, Counselor. Let me say for the record that we have certainly over the course of time, through various hearings and work sessions, gone through this application pretty thoroughly as far as the planning board is concerned, speaking for the planning board, and have made several site improvements and suggestions, have made a few requests of the applicant. It's not our job here tonight whether to agree that this is a good use or not, because the village board made those determinations probably 2 months ago when they applied the zoning. Our discussion here this evening is limited to the site plan, and of course the architectural review board has its concerns. So we will limit our any discussion from the public or any discussion this evening will be as it relates strictly to the site plan. So I know that you guys have done some preparation. In the past, we've gone through traffic studies. We've exhaustively looked at the application. I know those things have been a subject of public hearings in the past, unless there's specific questions that the planning board has as far as traffic, and I'd like to just focus our attention this evening in on the site plan. This would be the final site plan submission unless the board sees any reason to modify it. There was some specific requests that we went through, specifically as it related to some parking, so I'll allow you to give us a brief overview for those members in the audience who are here, just to refresh their memories, and I'm sure you can do this by rote at this point, and then we'll move forward with the requests that we made and call up whoever subject matter experts you need to address the board. Sir, state your name and address for the record first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. William Vanesso for Shelley Curve, Deegan, Schwartz, Minnie on Tarana, 333 Earl Ovington Boulevard, Uniondale, New York. Here on behalf of the applicant, DNF Patchogue LLC. As the board is very well aware, the applicant is seeking to construct and implement the use of the property situated on Main Street in the downtown area to build a 5-story maximum height 5-story assistance living facility, senior assisted living facility. As you've indicated, it's been significantly reviewed by this board. The last time we were formally here before this board at the last public hearing was some time ago, but I do know that there was a workshop last month that I was unfortunately unable to attend, but our representatives from the site engineering and architectural firms were here, and in response to the workshop, they have made some modifications that we're prepared to address tonight. Just as an overview, I'd also like to say good evening to the members of the review board. Thank you for hearing our case this evening. Just as an overview, since our last formal appearance here, as the board is well aware, the planning board made a recommendation that we needed to go to the board of trustees. They made a recommendation to the board of trustees to hear our rezoning request. In response to that, we filed a formal application with the board of trustees. The board of trustees scheduled a public hearing. We appeared and presented our case for the rezoning at that public hearing. As a result, the Board of Trustees unanimously granted the rezoning application, changing the property from D2 and D3 zoning to H zoning district, in which a use like this is permitted. Thereafter, we were required to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to obtain variances for the building in terms of height, building coverage, setbacks, and also the site configuration in relation to the amount of parking, the configuration of parking spaces, parking setbacks, and the like. That application was filed, public hearings were held. At the second public hearing, the board unanimously granted our variances, all the variances we requested. So at this point, it brings us full circle back to the planning board to seek site plan approval and to the ARB to seek architectural review board approval. And as the board, as the chairman has noted, we intend to make some brief presentations on the part of our architect and our site engineering consultants, who will provide information upon the latest architectural features, the latest site plan development. And also, we'd like to address some concerns that we have based upon some of the conditions, the proposed conditions that we've been advised of that the board is considering imposing. We'd like to just address those as we go forward. But if I may, without, if there are no further questions of me, I'll call up Mr. Patchogue next.
Did you get the cards for the mailing?
Oh,
No.
you did not get the
Did
card?
you get the cards?
No, we did the mailing. I know we gave you an affidavit of service. I can provide you with the
No,
cards.
Yes, I think it was dropped off. Hold on a minute. Yes, it was. I have it.
You have it?
Yep.
All right, counsel.
Okay. If I may, I'd like to call up Mr. Patrick next door. He is with our architectural firm. Prepared the plans, designed the building, and I'd like to have him provide his testimony and narrative, updating the board on the latest architectural plan, materials to be used, and then also to address one of the issues that we have with one of the proposed conditions.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patrick Victor. I'm a project architect with PGA Architects in Newburyport, Massachusetts, specialist in senior housing for almost 50 years. We haven't really presented the plans to any boards to this point, so I'm going to start quickly, and particularly because the architectural review board is here, run quickly through the basic layout of the building. I'm going to do it relatively quickly, but clearly if you have any questions, I'm happy to go through all of it in any detail necessary. On this board, you're seeing 3 floors. This is the basement level, this is the street level, this is the second floor. In the basement, there's some mechanical space, resident storage, and a couple of common areas for resident use, a theater, obviously a good place in the basement, doesn't need natural light, etc. We have a creative arts area that has access to a light well and a beauty shop. The street level is where most of the action is, particularly for the assisted living residents as opposed to the memory support residents. Main Street is along the bottom. The drop-off is a long stop to the west, back into the parking lot, and I'll let Sharon address the site issues. Most of the common areas are concentrated around the entrance. Generally speaking, in these sorts of facilities, the more sort of activities you have going on in one area, the more lively and more interesting it is for the residents. So you've got a library, Obviously, the main feature in most of these facilities is the dining area, but we have exercise and activity spaces, sort of secondary dining and activity spaces. The orange represents the administrative piece. This gray area is the commercial kitchen that serves the dining area. And then in the back, we have this sort of blue color is the residents, the actual apartments themselves. The second floor, you can see, on most of the upper floors, you'll see at least a small area of common space for the residents on that floor to gather for various activities. But for the most part, that floor is dominated by apartments. There is some essentially like, not quite nursing supervision, but sort of staff support area that supports the residents on that floor.
Could I ask you two things?
Yes.
First of all, I'm assuming that the basement area is limited to that center portion and the rest is on slab?
Yes, that is
So that's not
correct.
storage areas?
That is correct.
Okay, and the second part, I understand that now. The second part, could you take that second easel and point it towards the crowd, and when you're done showing the board,
Yep.
point it in that direction, because I know this is being videotaped, and it makes sense for them to be able to show that as well. So if we could just do that.
Absolutely.
If you could raise it up a little higher, that would be good, if possible. If not, we'll just have to make do. Go ahead, continue on, sir. Sorry.
This board shows the third, fourth, and fifth floor. The third floor is essentially the top floor of assisted living. The fourth and fifth floors are essentially identical. They're the memory support units. They're sort of divided into, they're sort of thought of as like two houses. The idea with memory support is to keep the number of residents down to a relatively small number, to sort of, because they have a tendency to be overwhelmed by large numbers of people, so the more home-like that you can make the places, the better it is for those residents. So each of these floors is essentially self-contained. They have their dining, their living, their activities areas. We have a porch area that's sort of a four-season porch, so we would decorate it to make it look like an actual sort of porch. And then there's some outdoor space that's protected by some high fencing for those residents as well. There's a beauty shop that's shared between the two floors. Actually, no, each floor has its own beauty shop. Fifth floor, very similar, all the same amenities, although the residents don't have that outdoor access, that they would go downstairs with staff supervision to get that. Any questions quickly on the plan?
So the fourth and fifth floors are physically small,
Yes.
set
building-
back from the street in order to affect that setback that we see
Our
on the
original
elevations.
Our original goal with the concept is because you have a height limitation. What we wanted to make sure that we did was that we kept a scale that was appropriate to Main Street with the three-story section. And where the building steps up, it's far enough back that it doesn't loom over the street. It doesn't have a strong physical impact on either Main Street or Maple Street in the case, so yeah, I think so.
I think people are acutely aware of exactly what that's like now.
Yes.
How many stairwells or elevators?
There are 3 elevators. There are 2 concentrated in the core of the 5-story building. Actually, there's 4 elevators. There's one elevator on the ground floor that only serves the delivery area. There's 2 that serves the main portion of the 5-story building, and then there's a 4th elevator that actually serves that sort of outdoor space that's up on the 4th floor for assisted living residents to get up there without going through. You typically don't want residents going through the memory support floors. They don't need to. Residents that don't live there because it's disruptive to those residents.
2 questions.
Yes.
A, where is the elevator in relation to the ambulance entries?
Sure.
If you could point that out. And secondly, what is the physical size of the elevator?
Sure. I think I submitted with our application a single 8.5 by 11 sheet that shows the exact physical size of the elevator. It's a 4,000-pound elevator, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's designed specifically to accept the stretcher as it's defined in the New York State code. So there's a particular size that you have to meet. Every one of the elevators is designed to be that size. The area that we're calling for an ambulance is in this sort of in the center of service core. The 2 elevators, the 2 main elevators that serve all floors of the building are immediately adjacent to that.
Okay.
The secondary drop-off area is here, and there's that other elevator that serves the 4 floors.
So I'm assuming this is a locked facility, a secure facility for the residents, obviously. And I assume that the applicant would have absolutely no problem with making sure that emergency services personnel, not personnel, but vehicles, et cetera, have the ability to get into the building when they have to, instead of having to possibly try to find a super to gain entrance.
Typically, we would
Which
put
does
a
happen,
Knox
believe it or not.
box with keys to the facility as the
Well, Knox
minimum.
box would be required under fire laws, but I'm speaking specifically for EMS.
I would assume that that's not a particularly big deal. It's not a problem.
Not a problem,
A
right?
representative from our proposed operator, LCS, is here, and he's indicating that that would not be a problem.
I imagine it has some kind of card access system for the residents, correct? Not a key. Key to their apartment, obviously, but to get into the building, it's a secured facility, obviously. And it'll probably be some kind of card access. If you have somebody who's gonna bring up, as long as we're on that topic, I need to get these facts down. Need to know what we're doing.
Joe, could you state your
So state name and address for the record.
state your name and address for the record?
I'm Joseph Rusella, from Life Care Services. I'm president of 18 Jacobs Landing, Westbrook, Connecticut.
Thank you, sir.
And question.
So if you could just talk to us about the access to the building and how people generally access the building, the public,
Sure.
the residents, et
In
cetera.
terms of residents coming and goings, they will primarily use the same entrance that the public will in most cases. There may be some more convenient areas. I'm still not completely familiar with the design here, but the fact of the matter is, the building is secure. It is staffed 24/7, so there's always staff for outside emergency access to come in. In fact, they meet emergency personnel when they come into the building. There would typically be a single location where emergency staff would enter a building of this particular type, so that there'd already be procedures in place as to how to meet the personnel and assist them up to the area.
Okay. Fine, thank you. Okay, carry on.
So moving on from the plans, unless somebody has a specific question. The rendering, which I think everybody is fairly familiar with at this time. Again, the concept behind this was to keep the scale at Main Street down, so it was more in keeping with the rest of the character of downtown Patchogue. The actual architectural treatment of the building, because you don't have a strong stylistic one style that sort of dominates the town, we sort of picked something that would be appropriate for this sort of era of downtown. So you get sort of an expression of what old sort of firewalls, it's brick at the base up to a stucco material. I've actually got a very similar drawing with some materials associated with it. Obviously the same rendering. We're showing brick at the base, and we've talked about a real brick to this point. There's a band that runs at the top of that brick, typically around the building, that would be a cast stone material. Above that, the sort of beige on the upper floors is it's called IFAS, Exterior Insulation and Finish System. You guys are an architectural review board, I'm sure you've run across that, planning board probably as well. It's essentially a coated insulation material. I can explain the layers and how it works if you'd like. There's a little diagram on this
I
board.
think we're all pretty familiar with Drive-It.
Very good. Drive-It is a brand name.
Another brand name.
Absolutely. And then the top floor we're showing, or on the roof, we're just showing asphalt shingles. You can see there's a pretty good match between the colors there. That's basically it in terms of the materials. We are showing a rigid awning down here, and I showed sort of an example. This is a metal awning that has the same basic character of what we've been showing. So we haven't gotten to the level that we picked that particular product, but it's clearly available, and that would be in keeping with the same sort of that retail look on the ground floor.
How much is the setback of the building?
It almost hits the property line along the front. It's back about 5 feet. It's a little bit less than 5 feet. along the front. It's basically in line with the video store and that other building adjacent. So it maintains a street, sort of constant street frontage.
I just had one more question about the plan.
Sure.
I think we talked about this a while back, laundry being done on site. Is that in the basement also, or?
There's no commercial laundry in the sense that you're thinking about it. There are there are laundries on each of the floors, fairly substantial laundry areas.
Okay.
On
each floor?
each residential
Okay.
floor that will deal with that.
Right.
So we don't have the same, we don't have some of the implications that go with a commercial laundry with
Right.
large equipment like that. It's done at a smaller scale.
Okay.
But there are no individual laundry in any of the
None of the
rooms.
resident apartments have laundry.
What does this apartment consist of?
There's a range. In the assisted living, there's a studio apartment, which would typically be an entryway. There's a little kitchenette. There's essentially just a large living area, and there's a private bathroom and then closets associated with that. There's some larger versions of that. There are some one-bedroom units that typically exactly the same sort of thing, except with a defined living and a defined bedroom space. We have what we're calling a companion suite where two residents, they could be related to one another, but they may not be. But they have their own separate bedrooms, but they share that kitchen space and that entry area. On the memory support floors, similarly, we have, it's mostly studios in this case, mostly the nature of the condition makes the most sense, but there are a couple one-bedroom units for residents who want to have a little more space, but for the most part, they're studios. But it's the same thing, minus the cooking parts of the kitchenette. They still may have a kitchenette area, but they wouldn't have cooking equipment associated with their apartment, because that's obviously the main person.
Excuse me, question, so just to reiterate, the main, bottom floor, Main Street level,
Yes.
it looks, it's so small I can't see it, looks like there's no living space right on Main Street itself,
There are no
Common
apartments,
areas?
yes, it's all common space along Main Street. The only apartments on the ground floor are in the back.
right, and then it steps up.
Yes.
And you mentioned 5 feet back from Main Street itself?
No, from the
I mean, from
property.
okay. And will you have, I know you have a landscape plan, but will you have shrubs in front of that 5, in that area, or is it just going to?
I think the idea is to sort of maintain the hardscape of the street and sidewalk, of the sidewalk at that point. We may put some planters or something, we haven't gotten maybe to that level of detail. It'd be something that potentially would be movable, but not something permanent. It's sort of out of keeping with the general character of downtown, as I understand it, to have permanent plantings in that location.
Right.
Plus, I don't think they would.
I mean, it is, it's,
I think-
it would soften.
Yeah, I think
it would
softening
soften
is
it, and I think it would be beneficial aesthetically to look at something that, I mean, it's nice the way it's set back, but it kind of gives, it just gives it a different look than your basic store on Main Street, so.
I'm trying to visualize the footprint of that building on the property.
Yes.
Do you have anything?
Sharon, I'm gonna steal your site plan, is that right here? Hopefully this is reasonably clear, so the property line follows this outline. Our building is this. It's essentially a sort of a straight line. It's trying to have some jogs in it, but because of the narrow constraints of that particular piece. And there is it does sort of hammerhead along Main Street and then continue back more or less in a straight line back from that. I know that one of the main issues that remains sort of in contention is the heating and cooling for the residents. We were showing on the rendering, I do have the elevations, but they're sort of boring relative to the things, so I won't show them unless somebody wants to see something specifically. what's called a PTAC. It's a package terminal air conditioner is the name of it. It's a heating and cooling that allows individual residents to have control of their heating and cooling without needing a central plant for that. It's something that you see on most assisted living, to be honest, or in lots of assisted living. In fact, I brought a couple of examples of projects that we've done both recently and going back a little ways that included those. This is actually a memory support project that we just recently did in Indiana. You can see under the windows those PTAC units. This is a project in Beverly, Massachusetts. You can see them sort of, they're kind of working. There are too many things on this easel.
Why don't you put the materials one on the one that faces the public? You can take some of those down, otherwise it's going to slide over.
I don't think that this easel was up for this board. This board's kind of heavy. So this is a good example. This is a fairly traditional sort of New England treatment of a building that we worked in these units so that they fit into the character of the project. They were as unobtrusive as you can make them. I know that you see them a lot on hotels even, and they look sort of fairly uninviting. This is a project in Great Neck that we did maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more than 10 years. That is a similar materiality, but obviously a little more contemporary character to it. But again, this one you get some sort of harsh lighting, so the shadows are slightly accentuated, but using those, the standard product comes without any sort of grill on it. It's just sort of a metal mesh. In every case that I've shown you here, we've used an architectural louver. It's an aluminum louver. Most of the time we try to get it so it matches the color of whatever the background material is, so that the thing can fade into the background as much as possible, sort of again to make it as unobtrusive as possible. As far as noise goes, they're generally in the range of a sort of standard conversation in terms of decibels, and there's no question that there would be any issues relative to your noise ordinance with these units based on the distance from the property line and the actual noise that they make themselves. They're so close to your noise ordinance anyway, and that even that little distance between even that 4-foot setback and the fact that they're up a floor would make them so they wouldn't be in any way in violation of your noise ordinance.
How are the common spaces heated and cooled?
We would have central heating and cooling for those, typically rooftop units.
How do you hide those rooftop units with a hip roof like you have?
Well, one of the interesting things, and I should have probably brought a roof plan, but what we typically do is those pitched roofs actually only cover sort of each half of the building, and then there's a well in the middle, so it looks like a bat wing.
Okay.
And there's a flat spot, so we can put large mechanical equipment, the kitchen duct that may or may not need to come up through
But the gable end looks all the way up, so it
Yeah.
appears that it's a full.
Actually, you can even see the two. You can see the two sort of pitches right there. So what we try to do is we push that mechanical equipment as far back from the edge of the roof as possible, and in particular on a 5-story building or even a 3-story building, you would have to be a long ways away from the project to see any of the large rooftop equipment that we're talking about.
Okay, so it's hidden.
Yeah. We don't want to see it any more than anybody else.
There's also another benefit to the through-the-wall type heating and air conditioning units for health-related buildings, nursing homes, hospitals, assisted living facilities, where you do have people who may be more susceptible to illness as a result of airborne germs or diseases that could be spread by duct-type air movers, at least for the resident units themselves. By having the individual units for each room, it can kind of isolate that to a greater degree, which is better for the residents, again, hoping to keep them, older people who may be more susceptible to that type of exposure. It provides an additional benefit from a health perspective.
So do you actually have a picture of what it is you propose on using tonight?
I don't have a great picture of it.
Is that something you could just provide to
And
the
I
building
can-
department?
Yes, for sure.
Is that something that's mounted in the ceiling and just blows down?
No, it's very similar to what you'd experience at a hotel. The ones in hotels tend to be very large for whatever reason, but it's that sort of a unit. It projects out slightly from the wall.
Trans or something?
Train is one manufacturer, but there are, LG makes them, lots of manufacturers whose names you've never heard because they're sort of commercial equipment. This is one of the pictures of the louver, which is really what you'd see. It's a very simple extruded aluminum product that we can get in multiple colors, but as I said, we typically try to get it so it matches up with the treatment around the window, so you basically don't notice it.
It's kind of like a hospital where underneath the window it protrudes out
Yeah.
X amount of inches or 8 inches.
Yeah.
So, could you just provide to the building department detailed sheet on the unit and show, you know, gives the measurements, how far it's going to protrude, and
Yes.
whether, and how close you'll be able to color key it to the material you're using on the building? I mean, that'll probably satisfy our request.
Okay.
I'll
be able to
just
give you
notice that the project on the Four Corners, they have multiple, obviously multiple heating and cooling units that do come out, but they are color keyed, and actually, I was looking at them today, and they're really not that obtrusive, so, and they're, I think, considerably bigger than what you're talking about there, so I think we could
The
probably.
advantage of the sort of the volume of units that we're talking about is we can actually get the louvers painted whatever color we want them to be.
So I think aesthetically, I'm not speaking for the architectural review board, but I think it just makes common sense that you want them to be as close as possible so that they kind of just blend. You know?
So I'll be able to provide you with a sort of an equivalent unit. We were a ways from buying this out and it'll all, so I can provide you with a range of, these are what the units are like. They're all very similar to one another. And if you look at the product literature, you'd think that all of the louvers were made by the same manufacturer and just given to the actual unit manufacturer, because the cut sheets look exactly the same.
Do you have a elevation of the rear and the Maple Avenue side so we can see how that's going to play out with the brick and the?
Yes. What's obviously less satisfying about a drawing like this is it's flat. So we've tried to show some shadows in here so it gives a little bit of the sense of depth. This is the very back that faces north. It's a fairly simple facade. It's the same treatment all around. So ultimately you do a rendering that looks very similar to the front. This is the west side, so this is the side that essentially faces the bank. And this is the side that faces Maple Street. And if you come up here and look carefully, there's some sort of grade boxes. That's a close to the location of the houses and the other structures that are on the adjacent property. So at the front here, you can see a box that represents the printing shop and the other stuff that's in that building, and then the single family house back there. I don't have actual measurements of those things, so I just have to sort of estimate where they were. I knew where they were on the site, but in terms of volume of them, I just had a guess at it. So you can see it's the same treatment. You get the sort of gable ends with that firewall treatment, brick along the base, that cast stone band that runs, and then the IFAS or private stucco material above that. We haven't sort of changed the vocabulary as they come around the building to make it less expensive or anything like that. It's all meant to be seen as a whole.
I think it's important that we have as part of the record the fact that the applicant, at the request of this board, and I'm sure at their own need to do this, did acquire one of the homes on Maple Avenue and attempted to acquire the other private residence that's on Maple Avenue on several occasions. And I know for a fact that the applicant did do that diligently, and that in fact the resident who lives there, which is their right to do, did not want to sell their home. For whatever reasons, their personal reasons, they want to stay in that home. And so the shadows you see are pretty much what they're going to be looking at when they look out their back window, but that's their choice. And they were made abundantly aware of what was going on the site right behind them. So it just should be noted for the record that in fact, you know, all efforts that could have been made were made to acquire those parcels, or that parcel. And in fact, that was not something that could be done.
Very true.
So we've also tried to keep the building as far from them, both for our benefit, to provide some open space, but also to their benefit as well.
But understand that, in fact, this building will be in their backyard. And it's gonna be 5 stories, and it's gonna be in their backyard. So they'll have 5 stories across the street, they'll have 5 stories behind. So that was their choice, though. It may change in the future, but as it stands right now, it's not something that can be dealt with. The applicant was more than willing to acquire that home if possible. Just want that as part of the record. Continue on, thank you.
I don't have anything further. If you guys have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
You have the 5-foot setback available there. Can you dress that up a little bit with greenery or flowers or anything like
I
that?
think we can certainly entertain that. I think it may make some, just speaking sort of extemporaneously here, it may make sense to do that with something that's more in the planter vocabulary rather than something that's fixed in the ground. Something that, it's potentially something they would want to do anyway to dress up the front of that, but I suspect that perfectly reasonable.
I think our representative from our site engineering firm is going to address that in more detail.
So any other questions for the architectural effects of the building? Karen, you good? Yeah, please, take it over.
My question to you is, what are you going to put signage for the name of the project?
It's a good question. We really don't have a piece of ground that you would normally associate with a sign, so I'm assuming it's going to be a building mounted sign on the front. I don't know that it's likely to be very intrusive, or it doesn't need to be very large, but we haven't worked out the details of that. We would obviously have to provide some indication of that at some point once we figure out what that is.
Yeah, that would obviously have to be another application to the architectural review board. Once that is
East, west, window, east, and west, something on this side or the...
It's going to sort of be its own sign, I suspect, because of the scale of it. So it won't take something obtrusive in any way to get the point across. This is where you're trying to get to.
Could you just review the materials one more time as far as the type of material and if there's a color or a particular number associated with that so we can have that on the record?
Sure. Brick is tricky. I've tried to bring a version of the brick that we think we're headed towards in terms of the brick obviously comes in a range of colors. You typically get sort of a variation even amongst unless you really want that. The picture of the Great Neck project, that brick is very monochromatic or at least monolithic. I don't know that we're really looking for that. You can see the character of this rendering. We're looking for something that seems fairly organic. This is, I don't have a color number for this, but that's the brick color. We're not doing anything. There's no purple bricks or blue bricks or anything unusual. It's pretty brick.
It's going to be the brick family.
Yes.
Okay.
This cast stone band is shown. This is a particular brand called Rock Cast. It's a color called bone, but it's essentially sort of an off-white color. Even if we ended up with a different manufacturer, it would be in that family. The IFIS product this is a color called cotton, and it's the medium texture. They have a whole range of textures that you can apply to the outside of the building. And the roof shingle is a CertainTeed product with a color of aged cedar. I'm not sure why that looks like aged cedar exactly, but that's what they call it.
And the metal awning?
Metal awning, I probably have to get a color. We're showing something that obviously looks sort of like a patented copper color, but it wouldn't be a copper product. It would be an aluminum product most likely. That's that sort of aged green color.
Do you want to be open underneath?
Yes. Yeah, it would just cantilever off of the building, out, not quite to the property line, but it's all within our property. So we're taking advantage of that 4-foot of space for that as well.
Is there any exterior lighting, like around the archway or so?
We would certainly have down lighting in that covered drop-off area. all the lighting that we're talking about is the dark sky, sort of no spillover, and I think Sharon will address that. And we would have some lighting in the back where our sort of garden area is. And then we have some parking lighting, obviously, to make sure that things are safe and secure back there, but not an enormous amount. We don't have a big canvas or something that we're trying to keep track of. So we would have some building mounted lighting potentially back here, but it would be decorative low, not trying to put floodlights or anything out there. And obviously, we've got between the spillover from the adjacent parking lot and our own parking lot, we would provide some lighting as well to make sure that that's safe.
I could see something at on the two columns of the archway.
Yeah.
If you had something there that probably would look good.
I agree.
If there are no further questions of Mr. Mixdorf,
Any other questions for the architectural portion?
I'd like to
I just want to confirm that, you know, what you finally submit in materials, with the exception of some minor revisions which you run past the building department, as well as your renditions here, all what will be built.
We have no intention to do a bait and switch with the people with Patchogue.
Materials, etc. And I know it has to be built to a certain standard. I just have one further question. Do the attic spaces in these, well, actually, there's really very little cockloft in this, because you said it's kind of set down. I was just wondering if those were sprinkled, the attic spaces.
We're talking about a non-combustible building, so the attic spaces, it'd be a metal roof truss, so there's no combustible materials over there, so I don't believe that the NFPA would require sprinkling in that space.
And let's just talk about, just for the record, let's talk about what the building is actually, the frame, the bones of this building are going to be constructed out of what?
So this is going to be a type 2 building, which is the second tier of non-combustible buildings in the building code. We're likely to have a metal steel frame building, so wide flange shapes, steel columns as the bones of the building. The skin of the building will be composed, and actually you can see it in this diagram perhaps, drywall on the inside, metal studs as the main sort of structural part of the outside skin, but it's not load bearing. All of the load is carried by the steel frame, and then the IPIS assembly on the outside of that. Roof would be, the floors would be concrete with bar joists, most likely. We haven't made anything, some slight variations on that depending on the economics of it, what makes sense. But it would still be a non-combustible, it would most likely be a metal product with a concrete deck on top of it. Roof, as I said, would be metal roof trusses. So an entirely non-combustible building, a fully sprinkled building.
Very safe.
Very safe. Different, because this is an assisted living, it's an I-1, it's an institutional use group in the building code. So it doesn't have, it has a higher set of standards than a typical apartment building. A typical apartment building is an R use, which you can build out of wood even up to 5 stories. So you can do more, you have more flexibility in terms of what the building is made out of if it doesn't fit into this institutional use group.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, if I may, I'd like to call up Sharon Rather. She's with our site engineering firm, H2M. I'd like her to elaborate on the latest site development plan and speak to some of the items that have been amended specifically to address some of the concerns of the board.
Good evening.
Good evening, I'm Sharon Morton-Romer from H2M. We have prepared the plans, the package plans before you, the engineered site plans that include the dimensional plan, the grading, the drainage, the lighting, the landscaping, as well as the details. For your record, I also have our affidavit of posting and the photometric plan, just like to submit. session. And as a result of some of the requests made at that work session, we made some minor modifications to our dimensional plan before we commenced with the engineering. So I'd just like to start, since this plan has evolved over the last 9 months, to let you know where it is now. The concern that we heard at the work session was that some of a very small number of the residents, but perhaps many of their visitors might be handicapped or need a little bit more assistance in getting in and out of parking spaces. What we talked about at that meeting was that the typical ADA handicap spaces has an 8-foot space, an 8-foot reserved aisle, and then another 8-foot space, and that's not always necessary. That's typically for your vans that wheel a resident or a person out, as well as any other handicap, wheelchair type use. Whereas many other people that need a handicap or a space that might have some problems, maybe they have crutches or a walker, they do not need that space. To reiterate, and for the record, the ADA requires that any site with up to 75 spaces, 73 was originally required, 59 was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Anything up to 75 spaces requires 3 handicap spaces. We do comply with the ADA regulations. However, in addition to those spaces, as requested at work session, we have designed some of the parking lot to allow for 4 spaces immediately north of the handicap spaces on the east area of the parking lot. In addition, when we got into the nuts and bolts of the grading and drainage, what we tried to do was push these spaces, or the westerly spaces, up to the north a little bit, just to give a little space, a little bit of, again, restricted area of a couple of feet to the south of that most southerly space.
Does that interfere with the emergency access gate that comes through?
It does not. There's what we show on
That corner gate.
Right, what we show on sheet 2 of 8 is a 24-foot wide easement from the property immediately to the west of us throughout the site, and that space does not conflict. And then I believe that you'd like us to provide for a emergency access to the extent we can, with the fact that someone else has a fence along that property line also. But an emergency gate, none of this will conflict with it. And to the landscaping plan when we get there, as was requested by this board, any landscaping there will be very low. We'll make it as pleasing as possible, but so that should a fire truck, and the unlikely need a fire truck to go through there. So to address those concerns, the building, as we were going through this, we were able to tighten up the building a little bit. It's not quite as long as it was. That gives this distance from the northerly face of the building to the property line of the northerly property owner. We got another 3.7 spaces for, I think, about 88.3 as opposed to what we had. So, we did our best during this portion of the project.
And we're maintaining how big a buffer to the residents of the immediate
I believe
north?
that's about 12 feet. I don't have a dimension on it, I'll check it for you. But again, the way we worked out that buffer was really working with our landscape architects and what will actually grow. And then working with some folks here in the villages, what kind of species they wanted to see there to create a buffer. So I did not mount the landscape plan. Would you like to, since there were some landscape questions, would you like to talk about those?
Sure, in your normal course of business. I don't want to take you off schedule.
All right. Well, I don't schedule, I'm here to answer any questions you might, but that's essentially what we've done to accommodate the questions that were last posed. To your earlier point, this plan...
Just so I have in my mind, the parking spaces, you were able to widen those spaces to how wide?
We were able to widen these 4 spaces. There were originally 5. We had to move one to the north.
Okay.
So that we could get a safe turning radius here, and we didn't clip that last space. So we were able to widen those 4 spaces. They would typically be 9 foot wide, and now 10.
Okay. enough room to get a walker out of the back seat.
Yeah, yep.
And that's what we're trying to do here, you know it's not an ADA compliant space, but it's enough for that, the spouse of the person who's there, to come
Walker,
visit every
side
day.
crutches, or
Exactly.
just a little,
It's a quasi-ADA compliant, quasi-handicap space, but it will serve the purpose.
will serve the purpose. The rear door has changed a little bit, so our access to the rear has changed. Just again, for the record, since we are here for site plan hearing, we have worked with the fire chiefs, with the commissioners, and provided this 20-foot emergency access area. They're going to be grass pavers where the grass grows through. So the back of the site here, there will be a fence here that will be satisfactory again, the fire department should they need to get through it. But this will appear as a lawn area, and then we will have some seating areas off of that. The lighting, as Patrick mentioned, is dark sky compliant. The fixtures have been chosen to blend with the fixtures already existing along the village right-of-ways. And the plans have just been submitted to show that we have 0-foot candles at the residential property lines. Obviously, we need some light getting in and out of the site, and there's also going to be spillover from adjoining light. I believe you have the landscape plan in the packet. I'll speak to it from here unless you'd like to go further. We have a few specimen trees here in the back. To the point that's been raised a few times, we spent quite a bit of time in our office and speaking with some other folks about this 5-foot strip along East Main Street. We chose to continue the look of Main Street there, again, because it would become a maintenance issue. We looked also at all the properties. Granted, the two properties immediately east, they have a bigger area that they do have some grass along Main Street, as well as then the only other property that I know of then going west to almost past South Ocean would be the Congregational Church because they had that alcove planting. So we propose at this point to keep it flush, not have to install landscaping there, not have a maintenance issue, but we do plan to dress it up with seasonal landscaping and pots or what have you. We'll be doing the same thing there at the front, at the entryway. Obviously, it's best for our clients, too, to make this as inviting as possible.
Sure.
So it'll be consistent with what's done in a lot of the rest of downtown. We are providing sod in the areas then. These areas, we have foundation plantings, and although we don't have many specimen trees, we have gone through lengths to try to provide you with some that are truly pleasing.
Have you conferred with Trustee Devlin and her tree committee?
I have, that's how we came up with it.
And-
Well, that's how we came up with the buffer tree. I don't know if you'd be up to any other suggestions for
And
the.
I'm assuming that they're satisfied?
Yeah, well, we're gonna talk.
We can work it.
We talked a little.
We can address any concerns
Because this
they
board
might
is
have.
pretty much deferred to them when it comes to hugging trees. They're very good at that.
Well, we found the
And they
buffers, we
really
believe we have the
know
buffer
that.
species, so.
They really know those species and what they like to see, and we trust their opinion.
So we will, the buffer will grow with a solid buffer there in the back. The grading, the drainage, it's a tight site, but it does comply with ADA requirements, it complies with your drainage requirements. It goes above and beyond that, so that when we get into SWIP, we comply with the requirements of the New York State DEC. Typical details, et cetera, but I don't think there's anything remarkable. I'd just be happy at this point to answer any questions you may have.
Have you submitted a SWIP plan yet? or-
No, we typically will do the SWIP at the time of building permit,
Okay.
but we already have it somewhat designed in our office because they go hand in hand.
What's that design to handle? 2-inch rainfall per hour? Is that?
This is for 5 inches.
5 inches per
5
hour?
inches.
I don't think we're gonna go down to 5 inches.
We did back in September.
Really?
It happens more
That's a
than
lot
you
of
think it
water.
does.
That's a lot of pools.
No,
That's
it's
a
no,
lot
it's
of-
causes a lot of
Yeah.
A lot of the ground.
5 inches.
Anything else I can answer?
We have, for the record again, we have been working with this site plan and this applicant now for a couple of years, Council, would you say?
It's almost a year. We started our
Previous to this application, we did
Oh,
another
that's
one,
true,
so-
that's true.
So it's actually been a couple of years, and certainly on this one, at least a year, and we've reviewed this several times, we've made certain requirements, asked for certain requirements, and I believe at this point they've been met. Does anybody on the board have anything further that, from the planning board perspective, would want to ask us for the site plan is concerned? Ms. Arnson, anything on the architectural review board that you'd like to ask? You're all good. Do you have anything else to present this evening?
I just wanted to address some of the proposed conditions. Thank you. Mr. Mazzella was kind enough to share with me the conditions. I don't have an actual copy of them, but he went through them with me and identified what they proposed, and I took notes and have a general understanding of those. Of the 18 conditions that were proposed, there were 3 that we had concerns with. The first one was the issue of the no through-the-wall HVAC or air conditioning or heating or cooling systems. I think we've adequately addressed that tonight, and subject to submission of what we would propose to put into this facility and details and images that we would provide to the board, we would ask that prohibition and the conditions be removed.
We'll be interested in seeing what you have to submit as far as that's concerned.
Sure.
We'll be looking forward to that. And the sooner that that's done, the better. The quicker we'll be able to move to our decision count. Go ahead.
The second condition of concern is one that specifically spoke to the handicap parking spaces and basically said that residents of the facility cannot park their cars in handicap parking spaces. And I recognize that there were some caveats to that, but the concern there is twofold. One, we have just the condition itself, which basically says, or is calling for the inability of a handicapped person to potentially park in a handicapped space, may run afoul, certainly if not with the specific requirements of the ADA regulations. It may certainly, we think it would possibly run afoul of the spirit of those regulations, and could present a problem down the line, not only for the operator, but for the planning board itself if it was sought to be enforced.
Well, we'd have to certainly check the wording of it.
Understood.
I understand what you're saying.
The other reason why I think that condition can be removed is specifically related to another condition that the board is seeking to impose, which we are fine with, and that is a condition that says if after our operation after our facility goes into operation, it's found by the planning board that the handicap spaces provided are inadequate, then the planning board can revisit its site plan approval and request and require the applicant to convert standard spaces to handicap spaces to accommodate for the shortfall that may be occurring. And that, of course, would be subject to zoning board approval, because in doing so, we would have to reduce our parking spaces further. So I think that condition in and of itself really addresses the handicap parking space concern that the board might have. Add to that the fact that, as Ms. Norton-Renner indicated, we are now going to provide 4 additional parking spaces that are wider at 10 feet, even though they don't meet ADA handicap regulation requirements. They will certainly provide more room for doors to be opened fully, for people to, as you said, pull walkers out of a back seat, come out with canes, come out with crutches, and basically have more maneuverability between and around their cars. I think that maybe something to consider would also be to possibly do what I've seen at grocery stores, where they have signage that says, please reserve these spaces for pregnant shoppers. I mean, in this case, not that our residents are going to be pregnant, but maybe there would be a voluntary restriction with signage or markings on the street that basically said something to the effect of, please reserve these spaces for those individuals or visitors needing more maneuverability around their, to get into or out of their cars. I think by doing that and combining it with the handicap spaces that we are providing, the 3 spaces that we are providing, I think that provides 7 combined handicap and close to handicap spaces on site, which I think that and the condition that the board would impose that we would agree with to revisit the issue in the future if the board determined that our handicap spaces were not sufficient, I think that accommodates the need of the concern of the board without actually putting a prohibition on residents parking, handicapped residents parking in handicap spaces. So that would be the second condition. The third condition that we would ask the board to reconsider or to at least modify is the provision that specifically limits the number of resident parking spaces that can be maintained on site. I believe it was 6 spaces. And it's not because we think we're going to exceed 6 spaces. We've had testimony, and the board has heard it on many occasions, that we don't expect there to be many resident cars at all on site. But the problem with a condition like that put in and imposed on the project is that when our client goes to lenders or banks to seek financing for this project, it will be viewed by, or could be viewed by a potential lender as a significant negative impact or influence on parties who may want to move into the facility. Now, and of course we could explain to the banks or try to explain to the banks or the lenders that, look, we're not concerned about this, we don't think it's a problem. But the banks being what they are today, they're only just now starting to lend again, and their risk tolerance is very, very low. And as a result, they may not be willing to grant the kind of financing that we would seek when we have conditions like the one that I'm discussing, like the one prohibiting handicapped parties from parking in handicapped spaces. It could have a negative or a chilling impact on our ability to get the financing we need. What I would suggest is instead to do just what the board did with regard to the number of handicapped spaces. I think we would certainly be able to live with a condition that says that upon construction and opening of the project, once it's in operation, if the planning board determines that the number of resident cars that are being parked on the property are creating some sort of parking congestion, the board can revisit the application, the site plan approval, and consider imposing a restriction on the number of resident spaces, the resident cars. That we can certainly comply with, because then at least we have an opportunity to get our financing, get the project built, get it operating, and then see if there's a problem, rather than putting the prohibition on up front, which could negatively affect our financing. So we would ask the board to consider those modifications, those 3. The rest of the conditions as described by Mr. Gazelle sounded fine. Of course, I'd want to see them formally on paper, but I didn't think we had any problems or concerns. I shared what I was advised with my clients, and they didn't seem to have any problems with any of the others as well. So with those considerations for the amendment of the conditions, we would ask that at this point, having heard from all parties involved, having heard from the residents in the past, and clearly you'll have an opportunity to hear from the residents tonight, if any are here to speak to this matter, we would ask that the board consider the approval and that the architecture review board consider the approval, with the understanding that we do have some things to submit, and with regard to signage and anything else that comes afterwards, that would have to be a separate application for the ARB as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll take your remarks under advisement, and when we actually go through the restrictions and the provisos of the application. I understand what you're saying, and we'll see what we can do to maybe help you out in a couple of those areas.
Thank you very much.
We'll go over that with council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there being anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the application? So please come forward, state your name and address, and tell us what's on your mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John J. Rowe III. I live at 12 Pearl Street, Bellport, New York. I'm an attorney, one of the owners of the property that's being considered for approval by the architecture review board and by the planning board. I have 3 comments. There was some mention about hard space on the facade. I also happen to be president of the Patchogue Business Improvement District. And we, especially John Bojack, who's in our audience, has devoted a lot of time towards streetscape and planters and things like that. So I think that as far as plantings along the street, the BID would certainly consider providing those kind of planters to alleviate some of the burden on the applicant. The second comment has to do with architectural review board, and particularly signage. I'd love to see the name Row. Anyway.
Rose Hotel, maybe?
Yeah, Rose Hotel. The third thing was mentioned about the brick facade and the colors. And I commend the architects for looking at the buildings alongside. If one looks at the archway, it matches the archway at the Congregational Church, 2 doors down. If you look at the facade colors, it matches the color row. You can see the building immediately to the west. I think the facade of the taxpayer on the corner of Maple Avenue is also similar in color, and it's similar in color to the Maple Avenue apartments. So in terms of fitting in, they've done a tremendous job of looking at what is here and trying to bring something here that doesn't clash, but rather enhances the structures that are already in place. So they did a wonderful job. I'd also like to commend the boards for their ability to see this project, put their input in, and to protect what is so important for the village, and that is good structures, good buildings, and move the process forward. And I think the actions of this board are evident that when anybody else comes to town with a good project, and as a member of the BID, I like to see that. So I commend the board for taking into consideration, taking really firm and prompt action to support the application, to make recommendations which are acceptable to the applicant. So I commend both boards. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for or against the application? Okay, so as far as the planning board is concerned, we're going to adjourn the application pending the input of the sheets, and then we can act on this at our next meeting, work session, whenever we have a quorum, whenever we're ready to do that. We have some work to do, whether it be in the affirmative or in the negative. It's certainly something we will be getting done in the near future here. So without objection, I'd like to get a motion, or move my motion then to adjourn the application, and then we'll turn it back over to the architectural review board. Can I get a second then? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. The floor is yours, Mr. Arnson. I'm sorry? Sure. Got it here, son. There we go. Cover sheet, cover sheet. There? There it is. Okay, you got it.
I'd like to hear a motion for the applicant of D and F Patchogue, AL at 131 East Main Street, seeks final site plan approval and architectural review board approval for assisted living project. Subject premises is located in H zoning district. This is for the architectural review board part. Could I have a motion?
Make a motion that would improve.
As presented. A motion made by member Brandy. May I have a second?
Second.
Second made by member Kastner. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Can I do this for you?
Thank you.
So you guys are halfway there, we'll get you there. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming down tonight.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
This is an open adjournment. Is there any indication of?
Open and adjournment pending some information that we've asked for tonight, which I'm sure will be forthcoming quickly. And we'll be following up at the earliest possible time we can follow up is at our next work session and or our next meeting.
Will you be able to provide those dates?
The dates. By that time, you can have hammer it out.
Thank you as always for your time.
You guys did a very thorough job, very thorough. I'll take a motion, take a 5-minute recess. All in favor?